Welcome back, everybody, to Chapter 26, Zenith. Let's go.
Win. I let the Elder convince me that this was the only way, because it conveniently allowed me to protect my friends. Instead, I had become a slave, and now I was desperately attempting to float beyond the reach of a zebra's devastating hoof strikes. It was time to get out, regroup, and hopefully come up with a strategy that was less mind-bogglingly stupid. Zenith jumped, a forehoof striking me in the breast. Pain exploded through my body. I screamed, my magic imploding as I dropped to the ground with a thud. The zebra landed a pony's length away. Gasping wretchedly for air, I looked up as she took a step backwards, bringing her hindhooves into bucking range. My horn glowed again. In desperation, I wrapped the telekinetic field around her throat and began to tighten. As I began to choke her, Zenith bucked at my unbroken ribs. But my choking had thrown off her aim just enough, and I had learned to dodge.
Dodging is important.
The zebra staggered as I tightened my telekinetic grip. There wasn't much physical force behind my telekinesis, but I had enough to crush her throat. I didn't want to kill the zebra mare, but I had to take her out of this fight. Zenith wobbled, eyes bulging, nostrils flaring. For a moment, she gave me the same terrified look that Daff had given her. Then, that look melted into resignation as she stopped struggling, watching me with a gaze that told me she'd accepted my victory. Then she passed out. I released her, letting her drop like a sack of apples. "What an upset!" Stern's voice boomed. All around me, the air roared with thunderous applause. "Kill! Kill! Kill!" I struggled upright, painfully catching my breath, and looked up at the crowd. I hated them. Every one of them.
Call in artillery
I
strike.
trotted over to Zenith's fallen form. She was breathing slowly. I looked up at the barrels. My horn flared again, wrapping one of them in a magical field. The barrel was securely fastened to the cage ceiling, and my telekinesis was not strong enough to tear it free. Stern seemed to glean that I was up to something because she unslung her anti-machine rifle. "Finish it," the Griffin demanded. Couldn't Stern at least call Zenith her? My mind flashed the memory of how barrels opened. I didn't need to pull them down, just flip the latches. Latches were easy. My horn glowed brightly. Stern pulled her anti-machine rifle forward and peered at me through its scope. "Finish it now!" The latches on the barrel sprung open. All of them. My pip-buck clicked urgently. True to number 4's predictions, most of the barrels held glowing green sludge. And weapons. The barrels released their contents, raining down implements of death. A magical energy lance. A sword. A chainsaw. A chainsaw? And even a couple firearms. I let them fall where the barrels dropped them. It was the sludge I wanted. The luminescent goop was barely translucent. I spun it around and over the inside of the cage, creating a glowing green coat.
I was just thinking that. Okay, use the sludge and create like a vortex around you to block her line of sight. I was just thinking that.
This film, but enough to obscure me inside. I didn't want any of those griffins or guard slavers being able to take shots at me. Immediately, I galloped into a new position. As I predicted, Stern fired a shot at where I had just been standing. I felt tears in my eyes. The pain in my chest was burning, my breathing becoming more rapid as I tried to maintain focus in so many places at once. Each breath felt a little like drowning. I wrapped another telekinetic sheath around myself, canceling out my weight, then extended it to wrap around the zebra as well. There was never any question that I would be taking her with me. The thought of leaving her behind here had never entered my mind. My vision blurred. I forced myself to keep focus. My horn flared brighter, a layer of overglow erupting from it. It occurred to me that a keen-eyed griffin might be able to spot the glow of my horn through the curtain of muck. But I needed to keep enough focus and channel enough power for just one more trick. And I needed more time. I telekinetically grabbed the magical energy lance and wedged it across the double doors seconds before slavers started slamming against them, trying to get in. The curtain weakened, holes appearing along the top of it. One of those tears was almost directly above me, revealing the door on top of the cage which I had spotted earlier, bound closed with a simple padlock. I kicked off, sending myself floating upwards, my eyes fixed on the padlock. I had no bobby pins. My screwdriver had been stolen from me. I should not need them. Manipulating multiple objects that were out of sight was tricky, but I had pulled pins from grenades hidden in a sack. And I knew locks. I knew tumblers and internal mechanisms. I should be able to pick a lock with my magic alone.
That's fucking cool.
Reaching out with my magic, I enveloped the padlock in a gentle glow. My own horn flared as a second layer of overglow burst around the first. Streams of light poured from my head. I felt a bullet lash past me, followed by the sound of a gunshot. Below, the blows against the double doors were causing the magical energy lance to bend. I was still floating upward, carrying the unconscious zebra. We were nearing the cage, but our ascent was slowing alarmingly. One of the griffins above fired down at me, but the shot sparked off one of the bars of the cage. I can do this, I told myself repeatedly. A second shot sparked against the cage itself, inches from the padlock. Who was I fooling?
That would be funny as hell.
I
They
could barely
actually
breathe.
shoot that padlock off.
My magic faltered, the swirling curtain slipping, wavering. No. I can do this. I shifted the tumblers in the place.
Use Gurren
Padlock
Lagann!
sprung open.
Willpower
My
to
vision
break
swam
the
again,
universe!
and I nearly lost everything. The magical energy lance cracked in two. The doors below swung open and slavers tumbled into the arena. Frantically, I hovered the padlock away and pushed open the gate. A moment later, we were through, and I was running along the top of the cage as fast as my surviving lung would allow me. I let everything fall except my grasp around myself and Zenith. My whole body screamed in pain and exertion. Shots rang out, bullets striking the cage about me from above and below. I weaved erratically, again doing my best to make a hard target. I was reaching the edge of the cage. The ice arena was at the far end of the Philadelphia Fun Farm. With luck, I could jump from it over the fence, again putting a barrier between me and at least the ground-bound slavers. The end of the cage came faster than I would have wanted. I jumped, screaming in agony from my chest. The two of us soared over the amusement park. My heart sank as I realized I had run the wrong way, and my jump was taking me into the fun farm rather than away from it. A tearing kick jerked my right foreleg with a metallic crunch. The sound of Stern's anti-machine rifle followed closely after as searing red agony shot through my leg. The bullet had missed, just barely catching my pip-buck, but the force of that alone felt like it had shattered my leg. I fell, my magical field imploding, collapsing onto a set of tracks several stories above the amusement park below. I moaned, feeling the world thump rhythmically through my body, as if I was riding a washing machine, and not in the way young fillies do to enjoy themselves. The world seemed crazily tilted. I could only take shallow breaths. Bright pain pulsed in my right foreleg, and I heard gunfire. Memory flooded back to me as my eyes shot open. I looked around, almost falling off the back of the zebra who was carrying me up a steep slope onto the Philadelphia Fun Farm's roller coaster track.
Yeah!
I had been out for a few minutes at most, long enough for the zebra to come to. Having awoken onto the elevated tracks, jumping hadn't been an option. There were only two ways left for her to go. I felt thankful that Zenith had returned the favor and taken me with her. My first worry was for my pip-buck. I lifted my foreleg, but only managed to raise it a few inches before I let out a tortured scream. Hot pain burst through my leg. My pip-buck had taken an indirect hit. It was not damaged itself, but the bullet had torn through the peripheral. The broadcaster was destroyed, and with it, my plan for escape. I brought up my eyes forward sparkle. My pip-buck was flashing alerts. I had taken more rats from being in the middle of all that green sludge than my pip-buck liked. My chest and right foreleg had taken crippling wounds, the latter having suffered a wrenching sprain and a small hairline fracture in the bone. Looking down, I saw slaver ponies shooting at us from the ground. By experience, these mares and bucks were not the best shots, even at close range. If they hit us at this distance with the cover of the tracks, it would be by sheer dumb luck. Behind us,
we all know
even
that's
more were
their
charging
dumb
up the
stat,
track,
along with
but they were
intelligence.
still well behind. It was the griffins that were the biggest threat. I looked around, but couldn't spot them, which meant very little, admittedly. Zenith reached the apex of the track, stopping just shy of it. A set of 3 colorfully painted pony-shaped carriages sat at the top of the roller coaster's hill, rusting for 200 years. There wasn't any room to go around them, leaving the zebra no apparent choice but to climb over them. She cautiously put a hoof onto the orange rear carriage and pressed her weight down on it. The carriage gave a metallic groan. She looked back at me with a grimace that I was able to match. I focused, wrapping us in a levitation field to reduce our weight. Perspiration broke across my head. Hot coals formed in my lungs, only one of which could catch breath. The effort sucked all the remaining strength out of me. My magical field popped as I nearly blacked out again. No. Damn it. Why was this happening now?
Because you got the shit beat out of you.
Before, and it had taken days, not to mention a magical statuette, before I could properly lift objects again. This felt much the same. Perhaps not a true burnout, but a severe drop in power, the result of having pushed so hard in such a weakened state. And true burnout could be imminent. I steadied my breath and focused again. My horn glowed softly. The levitation field wrapped slowly around us.
Where are the griffins? Like that needs to be asked. The field was holding.
Climb, I gasped. Now. The zebra cautiously mounted the carriage, then stepped down into the bench of the first seat well. The old car rocked slightly, groaning again. Step by step, she started walking across the trio of carriages. We were halfway across the purple middle carriage when a hole punched through the nose of the carriage in front, followed by a distant report. I grunted as Zenith took an involuntary step backward and fell partially into the carriage seat. My magic imploded, and the linked carriages let out a protesting whine. I had been wrong. It wasn't the griffins I had to worry about. It was the snipers and the damn Pinkie Pie balloons. Once we crested the top,
I forgot about
we put
those.
ourselves right in their crosshairs. And the carriages slowed us to a crawl, giving them easy shots. Another shot punched clean through the seat and carriage frame behind us. Zenith dumped me off her back into the cover of the seat well, then scrambled to take cover in the seat well ahead of us. We were pinned. The shadow of a griffin shot over us.
There's only one thing to do. Ride the roller coaster!
Dropping something to hit the rim of the stairwell and bounced over the edge of the track. A moment later, the grenade went off, the sound of splintering wood accenting the explosion. I felt a subtle and unpleasant shift in the carriage beneath us. The grenade had taken out some of the beams in the already precarious roller coaster's framework. Another griffin soared past, spreading his wings and banking. With alarm, I saw the creature was holding a rocket launcher. There was no time to think. We had to go. Jumping out of the seat well, I swung around and bucked the link that held the two front carriages to the back one. Another gunshot ripped the air above my left flank and punched into the back carriage. I noticed belatedly that the nose of each carriage was shaped and painted to look comically like the faces of Pinkie Pie's friends. I flung my forelegs back into the seat and bucked Applejack in the face.
Ah!
My body screamed in protest, my right foreleg flaring in pain and slipping. The orange rear carriage squealed and began sliding backwards down the track, sparks spraying from the rust-jammed wheels. The slaver ponies charging after us stopped abruptly, standing like pins before a bowling ball, then turned and tried to run the other way. One of them tried to leap onto a lower set of tracks and disappeared from sight. Without the rearmost carriage as the anchor, the front two began to slowly slide down the forward slope.
Push up!
I swung myself, trying to hook my injured leg back around the seat well's edge. I succeeded, but the pain slammed into my head like a sledgehammer. I screamed, nearly slipping free entirely. Zenith jumped back into my seat well, grabbing my mane in her teeth. The rocket launcher griffin fired. A streak of smoke shot towards us, tipped with violent death. Zenith wrenched me into the carriage, pushing us both down as far as we could go. A moment later, the rocket struck into the track almost where the rear car had been. The explosion washed over the top of us, cutting our backs with shrapnel and kissing us with flame. The carriage lurched forward hard, bucking up from the track and slamming back down as bits of metal track and chunks of burning wood rained into the park below.
It's fucking ugh.
What had once been a slow crawl forward was abruptly transformed into a racing plummet. The carriages bumped and rattled, squealing all the way down. The light blue carriage ahead bucked and skipped, threatening to jump the tracks. If it did, we were done for. There was no calamity to catch me this time. My stomach lurched violently as the downhill slide.
What? Okay, outside, the Steel Rangers, the what? Oh God, I forgot what his name was. Apple Snack, whatever. Steel Hooves, Calamity. There's explosions and gunfire. Okay, you could hear that. The explosions you might be able to see. What the fuck are they thinking is going on in here? Like, what's going through their head about what the fuck is happening over there? I don't know. I gotta find out. I hope they discuss that.
Tossing us against the seatwell's bench. The upward angle of the carriage now left our seat well exposed. A bullet punched into the bench, inches from Zenith's left shoulder, spraying rotted foam. One of the Griffins, I believe the one who had tossed the grenade, had unslung his lever-action rifle and was flying towards us, slowly pumping shots in our direction. Our impromptu ride had put distance between us and them, but we were already slowing. He would be in optimal firing range in moments. The second Griffin was reloading his rocket launcher. A third swept around behind him and banked, moving out of my line of sight beneath the wooden hills of the roller coaster. Lever-action Griffin fired again, and a line of blood spurted from the back of Zenith's neck. A grazing shot that I knew must burn, but she gritted her teeth and kept silent. The Griffin moved closer, aiming and fired again.
Steal that
The
fucking
rifle
gun
was
from
empty.
him.
Cursing, the Griffin drew up into a hover and began to reload. Reloading meant he had less of a grip on his weapon. I focused and telekinetically wrenched the firearm away, closing it. The Griffin's eyes widened as his own weapon twirled around and pointed at him. Blam! As he
Fucking
fell,
Big Mac.
another stream of smoke leapt from the other Griffin's missile launcher and raced towards us. The missile
Shoot it!
streaked past us, and I heard it detonate somewhere ahead. I urgently floated the lever-action rifle, checking the shots. The Griffin had only loaded 2 bullets into the rifle before I had snatched it away, leaving me with 1 shot. I had to choose my next shot. The third Griffin suddenly swooped up right next to our carriage as we crested the smaller hill, aiming a scattergun point blank at our faces.
Steal it!
Blam! The Griffin spiraled downward, my barely aimed shot having gone through her wing. Zenith was cringing in the seat as well. I dared to sit up and look ahead. At the base of this hill, the track took a sharp curve and shot into the tunnel that passed through the barn-like Ministry Morale building. But that second rocket had torn a hole in the track. Zenith muttered something in a strange tongue, appearing at my side. Then, in a low voice, "I hope this is still going according to plan." Yeah, I lied. I crawled forward.
Should've just said,
the balloonist never sent
"Sure."
another shot into the track ahead of us. The bullet from the anti-machine rifle obliterating a track tie. I hooked my flanks against the forward seat well, and slid over the face of Twilight Sparkle. The small horn protruding from the front gave me something to brace a shoulder against. Reaching down with my left forehoof, I kicked at the latch, freeing the light blue forward car. Freed of the extra weight, the forward car began to separate, slipping ahead. It hit the turn, then the gap. And the Rainbow Dash carriage did what it really wanted to do. It flew from the tracks and caught air. Focusing for all I was worth, I enveloped the Twilight Sparkle car in a magical field, negating our weight. I prayed to Luna that it would be enough to let us jump the gap. I prayed to Celestia that my strength wouldn't give out until we had. If there had been any doubt in my mind that the goddesses were watching us from above, it evaporated as both prayers were answered.
Oh.
The purple Twilight Sparkle carriage swept into the darkness of the tunnel. A hard jolt slammed through us as our out-of-control ride finally skipped the track. I felt my body being flung from the car as it skidded and flipped. I hit the track roughly. New pain bit deeply into my shoulder and arced like electricity along the nerves of my left foreleg as my left shoulder struck the metal rail. Zenith remained huddled in the seat well as the carriage rolled once before crashing against a row of clown pony-shaped pylons. I looked up, wheezing, to see the zebra's form crawl shakily out of the wreckage. I struggled to my hooves. Both my forelegs protested with discordant pain. My head swam. I wondered if I was in shock. Zenith trotted up to me. "So, my little pony savior," she said in her low, exotic voice. "This is still part of the plan, right?" I turned on my Pip-Bug's lamp. Somewhere in here, there has to be a way into the building. "The plan to escape is to break into Red Eye's home?" I could hear the incredulity lurking behind her almost innocent tone.
No one would expect it! It's ingenious. God damn it. This planet's just fucking hell, ain't it? Like, oh god, it just went to shit.
I nodded. We make it to the roof. There's always a Pinkie Pie balloon anchored up there. We're going to take it. That's how we get past the moat and the wall. I winced as I fought for breath. I have friends waiting outside for us. The zebra stared at me appraisingly. Are all your friends as crazy as you?
Only me.
You don't have to follow me, I noted with a sigh. I had saved the zebra's life, but in doing so, I had kidnapped her. She couldn't go back to the slavers. We both knew that. Until she passed the wall, I had pretty much trapped her with me. After that, however, although I really wish he would. You saved my life, little pony, she answered. You are responsible for it now. It is up to you to get me to safety. Until then, I follow. I nodded. And after. You are still responsible, she said firmly. Unless I take that responsibility from you. I blinked. It was one thing to be thinking such thoughts. It was quite another to have them thrown back at me in some sort of insane zebra logic. We trekked further into the tunnel, looking for a door into the old Ministry of Morale hub that Red Eye and Stern had made the center of their slave empire. I was badly hurt. But in my experience, I had a much easier time turning my interiors to my advantage in a fight. I was feeling a touch of confidence returning. The griffin with the missile launcher flew into the tunnel behind us. Both Zenith and I shrunk into the darkness around partial cover and held still. The griffin began to walk along the track, his eyes adjusting to the darkness. I focused on the latch of his saddlebag where he was keeping his extra missiles. Nothing happened. I focused again. Harder. Nothing. Not even a faint glow from my horn, much less a telekinetic field. I hung my head. Burnout. That save jumping the gap had taken what little I had left. I was
You need to stop doing that shit.
And useless. Damn it. Why did this have to happen now? I'd been counting on my levitation to at least get us into the balloon. Now, we'd have to find another way to get into it. If there was another way. And if we survived to the roof, which was now much more in doubt. I looked back up in time to see a shadow move near the griffin. Zenith had slipped up right next to him, completely unnoticed. Only now that I spot her, she struck out with a hoof. The griffin made a choking sound and his body went rigid. She wasted no time snapping his neck with her forehooves. I looked over the griffin as he fell dead beside the zebra. I wished he had been carrying a rifle. I did contemplate taking the missile launcher, but then, not being steelhooves, I decided against it. Clearly Zenith preferred a stealthy approach to combat, similar to my own. Plus, with my lack of experience, teeth-wielding high explosives inside a building seemed like a very bad idea.
That's why you should do it!
Pony-shaped. I did, however, empty his saddlebags and take them for myself. I peeked around the corner, staring down a decaying pink hallway. Two ponies wearing armor in Red Eye's colors were standing guard near a wall terminal, watching over a shallow alcove opposite them. I thought I saw the glow of a sunrise sarsaparilla machine coming out of it. These guards weren't actively hunting us, but as best as I could tell, there was no way around them. The only other way up had collapsed, decades ago. Still, I felt a pang of guilt at the idea of attacking ponies who weren't even threatening us, slavers or not. This stretched the definition of self-defense. I wondered if it would be possible to sneak past them, but the hallway was far too narrow, and they were standing with their tails to the wall. We'd have to pass directly in front of them, and no matter how light-hoofed we were, crouching didn't make us invisible. Zenith slipped past me before I could motion to her. She had no more hesitation about killing random members of Red Eye's forces. To my surprise, she managed to creep halfway down the hall before they even spotted her. She crossed the remaining distance with a leap, landing on her forehooves and bucking one of the guards in the head hard enough to send his helmet clattering down the hallway. The other guard was a unicorn, and she was already floating an automatic rifle towards the zebra. I screamed out at the pain in my legs as I charged the guard, lowering my horn. The unicorn turned, surprised by the second attacker, giving Zenith a chance to kick the automatic rifle. The magical field around it imploded as the weapon flew out of it and bounced against the dingy pink wall. My horn glanced off the guard's armor, hurting me more than her.
Oh, that.
Her horn was still glowing.
Bite it!
Electricity burst around her, tearing at my nerves as I stumbled and fell to the floor. Between the guard's legs, I could see Zenith collapse as well. I groaned, remembering that, unlike me, other unicorns have more magic than my telekinesis under their hats. The unicorn wrapped her assault rifle in a new sheath of magical energy and floated it over me, apparently considering a unicorn attacker to be the most dangerous threat. Fatal mistake. The automatic rifle went off, peppering the ground next to me with bullets as Zenith swept the unicorn's legs out from under her. I was barely able to move, but the zebra seemed to have recovered most of her faculties. My shredded companion rolled onto the guard pony and struck her repeatedly in the face with her forehoofs. I cringed at the sound of the unicorn's horn shattering.
Oh!
The magic around the rifle evaporated, and the firearm fell to the ground within biting distance. By the time I had gotten up, rifle in mouth, Zenith had rendered both guards deceased. I looked around. True to my suspicions, the alcove across from the guards held a couple...
Rifle in mouth has to be the most unwieldy weapon around. Like, okay, maybe melee weapons will be actually more unwieldy, because, you can only go, That's all you can do with them. So, a rifle, at least, it's got way more weight up front, but at least it could shoot.
Vending machines, a sunset sarsaparilla machine, and a functional-looking Iron Shots ammo emporium. Between them was the heavy metal door of a vault.
Seriously, man, how the fuck does that work with ponies? Like, how do ponies melee? Like, if they use their mouths to hold their weapons, all they can do is just go, Like, how does that work with them? How do they fight in melee? I don't know.
What is this? Zenith asked, staring into the room that had been sealed behind the vault door. She had been understandably perturbed when I stopped to hack the terminal, but relented when I explained that I needed to catch my breath, a statement my shallow, harsh breathing had proven altogether true. The worst part of my injuries was the fact that I couldn't risk healing them, not with a broken rib and punctured lung. Any poultice would cause those to heal wrong. I needed Velvet Remedy before I could dare use anything more than a healing bandage. And, in our situation, I didn't even dare use painkillers. I needed to be thinking straight. The wasteland, taunting me. I answered as I stepped into the vault, looking around at the mostly empty shelves with their scattering of memory orbs, none of which I could look into without my magic, and the line of passkey-coded wall safes along the back, none of which I could open. The Equestrian wasteland loved rubbing my face in every moment of weakness. What are they? She questioned, looking at the dozens of orbs littering the floor. Confessions. I started collecting the orbs, picking them up in my teeth and dropping them into one of my pilfered saddlebags opposite the ammo and bottles of sarsaparilla. Moving through the shelves, I spotted the glow of another terminal. Perhaps there was a way into the safes after all. Reaching it, I hooked my pip buck into the terminal and began my hack. This terminal was exceptionally tough. The little pony in my head started crying out for mintiles after the third time I was forced to back out of the system before its security protocols could lock it up. I fought to silence that voice. I was increasingly aware of how long this was taking. Stern had ponies scouring the building and surrounding grounds for us. They were spread out, but eventually one or more of them would stumble across us. One more try, I insisted to Zenith after I backed out a fourth time. If I can't get it, we go. Why are you trying to unlock Red Eye safes anyway? What do you hope to find? Zenith asked reasonably. Balloon tickets, perhaps? I snorted. I was about to reply probably with something snide when I found the password. Sir Linsalot. After staring at that for a moment, I no longer felt bad about not figuring it out sooner. From the timestamps on the terminal, it became clear that no pony else had figured that out either. The terminal had not been used to access these safes in more than 200 years. A security notice indicated that the far left safe had been accessed several times in the last few years through use of a passkey. I opened them all. The far right safe held a badly damaged memory orb case with a single orb inside. The other three were gone. There was also an audio log, a dingy cloak, a stealth buck, and half a dozen files. I caught Zenith's reaction as I pulled out the cloak, even though she...
Now we're talking. Anyways, we got ended here. See you guys next time. Not too much to discuss about this chapter, other than theorizing on how do ponies melee. And Griffins got claws, Minotaurs got hands, Changelings can change into either of those. And they got magic, so how the fuck do ponies do it?